The mother-in-law is kidnapped by a thug. The daughter-in-law steps in to help, but she herself is taken away. The daughter-in-law, who narrowly escapes with her life, returns home. But the mother-in-law wants to throw her out of the house, because her son was injured while trying to save her from the thug. The old lady angrily scolds Annie for being the cause, almost causing my son's death. If the hospital hadn't called me, were you planning to keep this from me forever? Annie doesn't know how to explain. At this moment, Elle walks in. He tells the old lady that it was his decision for Annie not to tell. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Elle continues, the person you're blaming right now is my lifesaver. Only then does the old lady realize that her daughter-in-law is no longer someone she can easily bully, and Annie now has even more affection for Elle. She believes that Elle has accepted her as his wife. Later, Elle chats with his friend John. John says, I noticed the way you look at Annie. The reason you risked your life to save her, is it because you've fallen in love with her? Elle recalls that he had told John multiple times that he was going to divorce Annie. Now, facing John's question, he says, reluctantly, I saved her because I couldn't bear to see her suffer. If it were anyone else, I would have done the same. Don't confuse sympathy with love. Annie overhears this, and realizes that she's of no importance to Elle. But that night, she still gently helps Elle change his bandages. Elle's eyes are filled with love. It's clear that he has fallen for Annie, but Annie is deeply hurt by his thoughtless words. Annie finishes changing his bandages and returns to her room. Elle seems to sense that Annie is upset, but he doesn't know why she's angry. That night, Elle couldn't sleep well. He opens the door and finds Annie still hasn't woken up. Elle can't bring himself to wake her, and tries to sneak out, but accidentally bumps into a chair. The noise wakes Annie up. Elle can only awkwardly greet her, but Annie still doesn't want to talk to him. This man is so contradictory. Later, Annie goes to see her father-in-law. She says that her aunt in the countryside is sick, and no one can care for her. She wants to go back and take care of her for a while. Her father-in-law indulgently says, of course, you can do whatever you want. So, Annie packs her things and leaves. Elle returns from work looking for Annie to change his bandages, but he can't find her. The old lady tells him that Annie left with her luggage. I can change your bandages for you. Proud Elle immediately refuses. This woman left without even telling me. Does she even care about me as her husband? I need to call her and give her a good talking to. He says this strongly, but when he actually calls, Elle suddenly backs down.
No sé dónde está la casa para mi cambio de venta.
That night, Elle couldn't sleep. This woman hasn't sent me a single message all day. Is it so hard to send a text? I need to call her again. This time, I'll really give her a piece of my mind. But when Annie picks up the phone,
Llamo por la comida de ayer, no la encuentro.
Look at this man. He clearly wants her, but won't admit it. Elle suddenly realizes, since my wife went back to her family, if I don't make plans with my friends, it would be disrespectful to my wife. Saying that, Elle takes out his phone and calls John. He plans to stay out all night and not come home drunk. The next morning, early, Annie is woken by urgent knocking at the door. She opens the door, and sees the contradictory man standing there. The newlyweds had to sleep apart, all because they were forced into marriage, but over time they had quietly developed feelings for each other. Neither of them dared to say it out loud. Al was tossing and turning on the floor, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. They quickly folded up the blanket, and stood together, trying to look like a normal married couple. Turns out it was Annie's aunt who heard some noise. She thought Al couldn't handle the chilly country weather. Al quickly said the bed was nice and warm. The aunt smiled and left relieved. To avoid disturbing her rest, they had to squeeze into the small bed together. This was the first time they had actually shared a bed since the wedding. The next morning as Al woke up, he couldn't take his eyes off Annie's beautiful face. Then he looked down at her hand, resting gently on his chest, and he had no intention of moving it. Soon Annie woke up too, and realized where her hand had ended up. She quickly pulled it back thinking Al was still asleep, but she didn't know he was only pretending. Annie got up to make breakfast for Al. Al gazed at her from behind with admiration, his eyes full of affection. Later Al took the aunt to the best hospital in town for treatment. After returning he started chopping firewood, and even built a new doghouse for the aunt's dog. Annie couldn't believe how he managed to do it. Al proudly replied, I majored in architecture, never built a house before, but a doghouse is a piece of cake. Al really enjoyed this kind of life. If he could, he wanted to stay there forever. Annie also found a bit of peace in that place, until the aunt recovered, and it was time to head back. When the older woman saw her son return, she lit up with joy, but the moment she saw Annie with him, her smile froze instantly. Meanwhile the wealthy father came home from work. Annie saw his car and ran up to greet him. She greeted him warmly, but after a brief hello, his face suddenly turned pale, and he wobbled on his feet. He knew it was another attack from his illness. He told Annie not to tell the family, so she asked the driver to take him to the hospital. watching him unconscious in bed. Annie broke down in tears. She begged him silently to be okay. Maybe her prayers worked. He slowly opened his eyes. Annie wanted to call Al, but he firmly told her to keep it a secret. He explained, if Al found out, he'd tell the whole family. At that point, my daughter would be too worried about me to focus on her leg treatment, and if that happened, she might lose her only chance of recovery forever. So please promise to keep this between us. I'll tell them I'm away on a business trip for a while. Now go home. Don't make them suspicious. Annie understood.